Hello everyone. This story is about, what if Naruto was adopted by Guy and fell for Kurenai? Please like, share and subscribe. Now let's start. Yugao had found Kin within about 3 minutes. The girl had put up no struggle and came with her quietly. Now they were in the Hokage's office, waiting for either the voluntary information exchange or torture to begin. Depended entirely on Kin which it would be. Tsuchi-san, according to my favorite genin, you left me a note mentioning snakes and music. That was enough for me to figure out that Orochimaru was the leader of Otogekure. If you have any further information, reveal it now. Hiruzen was in a bad mood. He hated seeing genin die, most especially genin of his own village. Despite all the laws about what a shinobi was, a genin was a child even if in most cases the law didn't see them that way. The only exception was that a genin that slept with their commander was viewed as having been raped. A chunin that did the same was believed to be in control of their actions, and thus, there were no penalties. Before I come forward with anything else, including the location of the base I know of, I need your word that I will be taken in as a ward of the village and kept somewhere safe until such time as Orochimaru won't send someone for me. No one knows I'm here right now, and my life would like to keep it that way for as long as possible. The Sandaime considered giving her to Anko and receiving the information that way. But willingly given information was typically more reliable than torture. Unless Ibiki was there to record whether what was said was truth or fiction. You have my word that you will be kept in a safe area under guard for as long as necessary. Now, tell me everything you know. Stupid Gigi, why would he take away my sensei right before the finals? I need someone else that can help me train. What did Dad and Kakashi think was happening that made them think we should be separated? Naruto was so lost in his thoughts, he failed to realize that he had walked straight to his sensei's home. He looked at the door for a few minutes before leaving, not willing to risk being forced onto a new team. I really need to see if Jiraiya sent me a letter, since Nico-sensei is way too busy with ANBU to train me more than she does. I don't get it, Anko, doesn't he care if Naruto passes? I was afraid that people would read into it like you did, and that's why I didn't tell anyone else about how I talk with him when we're alone. Turns out that people thought that anyway. Anko sat and listened as Kurenai vented about being taken away from the only student she had that would have asked for her help in training. Hinata and Shino both had training with their families that was taking precedence, and Naruto's father would be too busy with Lee to help Naruto much. Nai-chan, we've been friends for a long time, right? Kurenai nodded, still pacing around the room. Then you can trust me when I say that no one is reading anything into your relationship with Naruto. We know that you are his sensei and him a student, but we can all also see that there is something more going on. Yugao even told him about you dreaming about him, even if she said that it was a joke. What exactly were you dreaming of that night, calling his name in your sleep? I never did that, you and Yugao just said that I did because you wanted to tease me. This conversation wasn't helping Kurenai cool down like she thought it would. Maybe she should have asked one of her other friends to listen to her. I'm not some weirdo that likes preteen boys, Anko. Even if I did like Naruto, I'm 9 years older than him. There's no way he would want to be in a relationship with someone that much older than him. Kurenai almost sounded sad when she said that, and Anko was done letting her lie to herself. Listen to yourself. The thought that Naruto wouldn't like you in that way triggers an obviously suppressed emotional response. If you would just admit not only to me, but to yourself how you feel, it would make you a lot happier in the long run. Kurenai turned away. She didn't want to talk about this, she just wanted someone to let her rant about how stupid the Hokage's decision was. Yugao was both busy and an ANBU, so she wouldn't want to hear it. Anko was her best friend, no matter how infuriating she was, and wouldn't immediately tell the Hokage how mad Kurenai was at him when she left. Kurenai, I'm serious. I never made anything up about what happened when you last went drinking. Dai was telling the truth, being drunk didn't alter your feelings for Naruto, only how willing you were to express them and acknowledge them. I have no doubt that you would have confessed to him if you had seen him that night. No, I can't be like that. Something like that is shameful, perverted. Wrong. Anko watched the emotions play on her friend's face as she struggled to refute her statements. If Anko had to guess, Kurenai was beginning to realize the truth, and was disgusted with herself. That train of thought couldn't be allowed, not if she wanted to see Kurenai be happy. Yugao talks to me about him, you know. Kurenai broke from her thoughts and looked at Anko, curious where this was going. When she first told him you liked him, he confessed that he felt the same for you. He just always thought that you would never see him as more than your student. She crushed his hopes by saying that she didn't really know how you saw him, but she also promised not to tell you. She never made me promise not to tell you though. Kurenai felt as breathless as she had from the Hokage's killing intent. Knowing for a fact that Naruto saw her as more than a friend or sensei brought an unfamiliar feeling to her chest. It was too much, her feelings when she was with her student, and some half-remembered dreams that she refused to acknowledge rising to the forefront of her mind. She sat down. Anko, I don't know what to do. I'm just so confused. Maybe this time apart is actually a good thing. Anko tilted her head, the idea of forcefully being separated from someone you had feelings for certainly didn't sound like a good thing. Maybe it's just because I spend the majority of my day with him. I was starting to miss him already when Yugao would do his kenjutsu training. Maybe time away is exactly what I need to think about my feelings. Anko shook her head, a smile forming on her lips. Nai-chan, I bet you'll be back to venting in a confused rage about not being near him by tomorrow. You being older isn't an issue, after all, love is blind. Oh well, I guess as long as you don't try what you did when I turned into Naruto that night again, everything will be alright. Wait, I thought you didn't do the henge until the morning before I got up. I don't remember trying anything on you. Anko's smile rose back into her trademark teasing smirk, while Kurenai's expression slipped even further into confusion. Nah, I just turned it back on in the morning to see if you remembered the night before much. I guess I can tell you what really happened, if you promise not to get mad at me. Alright, I promise, now tell me what happened. Kurenai was getting impatient. If Anko was completely honest and she had been calling for Naruto in her sleep, she really needed to know just how bad she had gotten that night. Well. You kinda sorta tried to make out with me when I changed into him. Even managed to pull my shirt off and said just how badly you wanted to have a little girl with blonde hair and red eyes before you passed out. I shudder to think of what might have happened if you hadn't quit drinking after that. I know that we were having a celebration for Yugao that night, but I fear that neither you nor Naruto would be virgins if you had ever drank that much again. Kurenai was speechless. She always had a suspicion that she had done more than call him cute for her friends to take up teasing her like they had. But she never thought that she tried to take advantage of her friend when she turned into the person she wanted. With this knowledge and just how good the idea of having a little girl like her friend described made her feel, she realized that a whole month to figure out her feelings was much more than she would need. Anko, thank you for not telling the Hokage or anyone else about that. Would you mind staying here and listening to me rant about how mean the Hokage is for a little while longer? I don't think that a whole month was really called for. Anko smiled more genuinely for a few minutes before she got that teasing smirk back. As long as you promise not to jump Naruto the moment he wins the Chunin exam finals, I guess I can hang out a little longer. I do have a student of my own to teach though. Anko laughed as Kurenai developed a blush that could literally light up a room. Maybe having Anko stay wasn't the best of ideas. What the hell? The only thing that he sent back was a postcard from the former Yukikure. I swear I'm gonna have to talk with Gigi about letting me train with sensei. Indeed, Naruto's letter to his godfather, which was still a weird thought, had been answered with a postcard featuring Jiraiya responding with a "You'll find me where the water's hot." Just because the man was a spy master didn't mean that he needed to always write in code. After his small bout of grumbling, something that Naruto had done his best to avoid ever since being adopted, he walked to the village hot springs. Seriously, if he is so good at spying, why use such an easy code? Of course, some giggling caught his attention as he prepared to head into the changing room. Walking over to the spring that the women used, Naruto noticed a giggling man with white hair peeking on the bathers. Naruto felt a twitch in his eyebrows, but would not give in to his upbringing and call the man out on his unyouthfulness. It wouldn't be a good first meeting with his godfather. Pervert, your youth is suffering from these disgraceful actions. Repent and the flames of youth will forgive you on the condition that you do 3,000 push-ups with the locks of your hair. No chakra allowed. Naruto's shout did several things. First, the women bathing began screaming, with the exception of a voice Naruto recognized as Nico's calling for perverted blood. Second, it turned Jiraiya whiter than Orochimaru as he turned to see Naruto with eyebrows far larger than they were mere seconds ago, crying to himself about failing Minato. The most important thing was that Naruto himself was more afraid than he had been when fighting Kishimaru. He loved his father, and Lee was a good friend, but he would not bow to the symbiotic caterpillar aliens and follow their ways. His eyebrows, it turned out, hadn't actually grown, a simple trick of the sun on his reflective hair making it appear to have increased in size. Evidence that youth caterpillars existed still lacking, Naruto followed Jiraiya as he ran from the wall. Kid, never scare me like that again. I thought that guy's weird philosophy had corrupted you and that Minato would never have a grandson. Naruto managed to feel ashamed that he had reacted unconsciously to the perverted act. He wanted his godfather to like him, not think him some sort of loon that didn't have the common sense to realize that shouting next to a female hot spring about perverts could kill people. The Hokage was in his office laughing as he watched Naruto and Jiraiya run from the soon-to-be-formed mob. Really, Jiraiya should just make a crystal ball like he did and peek that way, where there was no evidence and you didn't risk yourself in the process. Both the Sannin and the Jinchuriki were winded when they stopped running, which was more due to fear and adrenaline than distance or speed ran. Both were capable of running for literally whole days, so the mere hour and a half was nothing. Alright kid, now that I've caught my breath, let's talk. I haven't spoken with the Hokage yet, so I don't know about any recent developments in your training or with your team. Bring me up to speed. Naruto could scarcely believe that someone that should have taken care of him and been his family could talk so easily to him after ignoring him for years. But his father taught him to forgive, so he would do his best to extend that courtesy to Jiraiya. Gigi told me that I can't see my sensei during this month because of something. I guess my dad said something about us spending more time together than he was comfortable with, and Kakashi-sensei backed him. I wish they would have talked to me about it first though. My Janin-sensei is Yuhi Kurenai, in case you didn't know. Jiraiya clapped a hand on Naruto's shoulder and whistled. Congratulations, she's a real beauty. Before you ask, no, I haven't ever peeked on her and I have no pictures or drawings of her without clothes. I'm a wholesome super pervert, and last time I was in the village she wasn't legal. Might try for some this time though. How often does she go to hot springs? Naruto just shook his head. Kurenai would hear about Jiraiya being in the village within a couple days, and there was no way she would put herself in any area where the pervert might see her as long as he was here. Too bad. Anyway, since you found me, and already know everything, it's about time you signed the Toad contract. Minato wanted you to, and so do I. Jiraiya unraveled the scroll that bore the contract, the final name written being Namake's Minato. Just prick your hand enough to write your name in blood, then stamp the fingertips of the hand you cut in the area beneath your signature. Naruto did as instructed, having to cut his hand twice since he didn't bleed long enough to write his name. Good, now just channel some chakra to your hands and make this chain of hand seals, before putting your hand to the ground. When you succeed, it will be congratulations for performing your first space/time ninjutsu. Jiraiya demonstrated the seals Naruto would use, before waiting as Naruto did the same. Naruto ran through the seals again, this time channeling a decent amount of chakra through his hands. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. A toad about the same size as Naruto wielding a bow staff appeared, looking around confused until it saw Jiraiya. Ah, Jiraiya-sama, what did you call me for? Jiraiya looked embarrassed and pointed at Naruto. Oh, the young one summoned me? I am Gamiri, combat toad of MT Mayaboku. It is a pleasure to meet you young sir, would you grace me with your name? I'm Mado Naruto, formerly Uzumaki Naruto. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Gamiri nodded, glad the newest summoner was so polite. Jiraiya smiled at Naruto, proud that he had done so well in his first attempt at summoning. Well done Naruto. Practice that on your own when I'm not around. I have all kinds of other techniques that I can show you, and I'm teaching you all of it. Naruto smiled, his mood brightened substantially with the promise of new techniques. Maybe he could deal with being apart from his sensei for the whole month. Lee. Your youth needs more training. I will teach you the secret to accessing the sixth gate, allowing you to use the amazing Asakujaku. Lee was taking notes in his little notebook, which he kept in his shuriken pouch. When Guy first realized that Lee kept a book in his equipment pouch, he had cried about hipness and coolness destroying my teachings. He later found out that Lee took notes on his speeches to better learn how to be youthful. Yes Guy-sensei. My flames of youth are exploding out. Guy nodded, the Asakujaku actually utilized the flames of youth. Or so he was taught. Kakashi told him it was just friction from his hands, but his eternal rival didn't believe in the flames, and he constantly tried to prove that they didn't exist. His special scene change of youth had gotten Kakashi to stop trying, but it had also cut down on how often the two men hung out. First, you must launch 3,000 punches at the post in less than 1 minute. Then, we will run 100 laps on our hands around the village, including going up and down the Hokage monument. Only after you can do this, will I allow you the sixth gate. Lee's eyes had lit with the flames of youth. Yash. Sensei, if I fail to do your training correctly, I will do a further 300 laps around the village carrying a statue of the Sandaime on my shoulders. If I cannot do that, I will do 2,000 sit-ups while hanging from the Hokage monument. If I cannot do that. Suffice to say, Lee and Guy didn't begin their training for several more hours, and Lee did far more exercises than should ever be considered by a sane human being. Never before had Lee worked so hard, as his determination to prove himself better than his naturally talented eternal rival Niji had increased when he finally tasted victory. Niji would now be more talented and would work harder, making him that much more of a challenge to defeat and retain his position of victor. Sasuke, I know you're not doing well emotionally, and that your first fight is against Zaku, who is half the reason you're not doing well right now, but I need your full attention. The techniques I will teach are never to be used against a comrade. You will want to use them against Zaku, and you will feel empty inside when you do, but to use them on a fellow Konoha shinobi will make you no better than either Itachi or Orochimaru. Sasuke nodded his head. No way he would ever use something deadly on his own comrades. The two people that he hated most were traitors, proving to him Kakashi's statements upon team formation. He still questioned Itachi's reasoning, but he hadn't had an opportunity to question the Hokage on that subject yet. I'm going to teach you my own original jutsu, as well as a select few others that will assist you in establishing a variety of moves. Being a specialist in a style of combat has drawbacks, but being dependent on a single technique is simply foolhardy. I know 1,000 techniques, but I only regularly use about 50 of them, from a variety of all elemental styles. You have yet to build the reserves required to use jutsu from other elements, but it will be useful to learn, as you so far only have Katan and Right Ton. The next 6 solid hours were spent alternating between jutsu practice and resting to restore chakra. There was a point after all where hard work began destroying the body rather than building it. Hinata. The young Hyuga heiress turned to see her father looking at her impassively. There were no detectable emotions on his face. I expect you to do well in the finals. Should you wish to resume your individual training with me, I will allow it. Hinata was stunned. This was the most he had said to her in years. He must have been impressed that she had made the finals her rookie year. Thank you, father, but I recently discovered that my body type is more suited to the Juho than the Juken. I do not believe that you wish to waste time training me in this lesser style. Being on a team with people that were so kind to her and close to her had done wonders for her confidence. Where she was even willing to talk to her father in a manner not completely deferential. Your preference of a variant form is unimportant. There are a number of moves that work the same way between the two, including the Kaiten and several others. My statement stands. Hayashi walked away before she could say anything else, his face still devoid of any real emotion, though if one could look closely enough, they would see that his face was less stern than it had been for years. Shino, you will spend this time getting your high better in tune with your Katan chakra. The chances of fighting the Uchiha are high, and they are known for such techniques. Other ranged techniques will be effective for your female teammate, while strategy and use of the environment will be necessary against the male. Shino stood still as his father spoke, seeing the logic in his words. What of the Sunanin or the taijutsu expert? That San doesn't seem likely to stop due to insects, and he is far too fast for me. Shikamaru and the futon user will be difficult as well. Shibi thought for a few moments, trying to find ways for his son to logically face such foes. The winner between the two in the last match will most likely be very tired, and the Hashimen are a double-edged technique. The Nara will most likely surrender once he has shown enough to advance, and the futon user is not used to the trees that will be in the arena. Overall, the biggest obstacle will be your male teammate. His skill set is too varied and too unknown to make a solid plan. Surrender if you gain doubts about your fight, don't keep going if you can't win. Shino nodded and began the arduous process of accustoming his bugs to Katan chakra. It might just keep the Uchiha from beating him if they fought. All other thoughts were put towards defeating Naruto, who was the rarest of all forms of shinobi. Beyond a jack of all trades, he instead was an all-around expert, taijutsu, ninjutsu, genjutsu, kenjutsu, and even fuinjutsu. His hidden clan technique would no longer be a surprise, which meant that Naruto would learn something new for the finals. Most likely something dissimilar from the rest of his techniques. Jiraiya laughed maniacally as he saw Naruto begin learning his newest technique. No one would be able to stop the boy from gaining a promotion at this rate. Having 50 men learn at a time was a massive boost to Naruto's training that Minato would have only dreamed of. Naruto, why haven't you bothered trying to sneak a meeting with your sensei? I know we've been busy training, but don't you at least want to talk with her? Jiraiya had taken a small break from his research to have lunch with his godson. Sitting down and spending time with Naruto was making him envious of the fact that Guy had been allowed to take care of him. While it had been decided that it was too dangerous for Jiraiya to care for him, especially with all the time he spent outside the village. Jiraiya-sensei, did you forget why I asked you for training to begin with? If I try and visit her, or she tries to visit me, I'm disqualified and kicked off of Team 8. I don't understand why either. Dad calls all of his students with affectionate honorifics, but Kurenai-sensei uses one for me and he decides I shouldn't be around her? It doesn't make any sense. Jiraiya nodded as Naruto was talking, thoughts racing when he spotted the difference that Naruto missed. Guy used them for all of his students, or didn't use an honorific at all. Kurenai only used them for Naruto, and only when they were alone. I could talk to the Hokage, he is my sensei, after all. Maybe get your little band from seeing your hot sensei lifted early? This statement came complete with Jiraiya wagging his eyebrows and writing in his book with a grin, oblivious to the horrified look on Naruto's face. Sensei. Don't use Kurenai-sensei for any of your depraved research, that's insulting. She hates those books you write. And she is super innocent and hates perverts. Jiraiya broke eye contact with Naruto to gaze in his book and realized that he had been writing while talking this whole time. Something else caught his attention about Naruto's statements though, and it brought his special, super pervert plus gleam into his eyes. How would you know if your sensei was innocent? She's 9 years older than you. She might have dated any of the other jounin or chunin in the village. Heck, she might have dated every jounin and chunin in the village. Like that crazy hot purple-haired chick she hangs out with, or maybe Kakashi, that mask is only worn so that the ladies don't mob him after all. Maybe she even dated both of them at once, and just didn't tell you. Naruto went from blushing imagining Anko and Kurenai together for a second time, to angry realizing that Jiraiya thought his sensei could have been the village lay, and just hit it. I heard from Nico-sensei that she's never even had a crush before. You should be ashamed for saying and thinking all those things about someone you don't even really know. You've never met her in person, and I know her way better than I know you. I'm gonna get back to training, sensei, go take your perversion someplace else. Jiraiya watched as his godson walked away from him, regretting his words. He had just wanted to have a talk with the boy that should have looked up to him, maybe even called him dad. Instead he upset him and made him leave to blow off steam. Jiraiya sighed as he stood up, his good mood ruined. In a burst of leaves, he disappeared. Hiruzen looked at his window as he waited for Jiraiya to come in, having watched his conversation with Naruto. The moment he saw the look on Jiraiya's face as his window was opened, he knew that a long conversation was going to break out. Sensei, why exactly is Naruto being separated from Kurenai? And I don't want you to use that same, his father requested it crap from last time I asked. You and I both know that no matter what the parent of a shinobi asks for, whether they are a shinobi or not, you aren't required to listen. This time, Hiruzen was the one who sighed. Headache approaching as he tried to predict Jiraiya's response to his answer. Simply put, we don't trust her to not try and take advantage of the boy. At the time I made the decision, she was not aware that Naruto has feelings for her, and neither he nor she was aware of the fact she felt the same. I had Anko better describe what she was able to glean from their interactions during the break before the prelims, and it is a certainty that Kurenai returns Naruto's affections. Both Yugao and Anko have assured me that Kurenai has enough discretion to avoid pressuring Naruto to do anything he isn't ready for. But I decided that it would be best to keep them from each other at the moment. No matter how intelligent she may be, Kurenai is still a woman in love, and Naruto is nowhere near ready to engage in a romantic relationship. Jiraiya had been able to glean that Naruto liked Kurenai from their talks during lunch, but he hadn't expected for those feelings to be returned. No matter how perverted he was, he wouldn't approve of a relationship between the two. Not for a few more years and a promotion on Naruto's part, anyway. According to Naruto, Kurenai has never even had a crush, let alone been in a relationship before. If her feelings got particularly intense, she wouldn't know how to handle it, and might make a mistake. Cutting them off completely isn't a good idea though, sensei. It'll give Kurenai the time it takes to realize that she has feelings for Naruto, and then they'll be all the more intense for being forced apart from him. The Sandaime sighed once more, hoping that Jiraiya's fears would prove false. A new idea struck him though, something that had been happening more often than it had in years when he had led Guy to adopt Naruto. What if I amended that band to where they could meet if you or Guy were there to supervise? Guy wouldn't be available enough to really be the one there, but you are stuck here waiting for the invasion so that you can counter it. Jiraiya slowly nodded his head, it would be better than nothing. Hopefully, Kurenai hadn't realized her feelings yet, or she might try and use genjutsu on him to get alone time. If she was desperate enough for time with Naruto, anyway. Alright, but you would also have to watch us with your magical peeping tool to make sure she doesn't send me into La La Land and have her way with the boy. I don't think that guy, let alone Minato and Kushina, would be happy to be grandparents so soon. The idea of an irate guy paled in comparison to his fear that Kushina would be in such a rage that she may come back from the dead just to kill him for not watching her precious baby well enough. Minato would be forgiving as he always was, and soon enough would be ecstatic at the thought of more family. But Guy would likely use his flames of youth to permanently turn the Konoha skyline into a beautiful sunset, complete with a double rainbow should something happen. It would likely make them immune to invasion, but the populace would be driven insane from too much youth. Still better than what Kushina would do to him, but not an ideal situation. Kurenai was training with Anko and Haku in the Forest of Death when an ANBU showed up and was quickly forced to dodge a combination jutsu featuring a blast of wind from Haku and a flaming dragon from Anko. Damn it, Anko. Can't you at least take a second to see who shows up in your training ground? I've had to pay for replacement logs, because of you, and good Kawarimi logs eventually add up. Anko rubbed the back of her head while Haku just glanced in Yugao's direction. Kurenai walked up to calm her other friend down, but was stopped when Yugao raised a hand. This isn't a social call, Hokage-sama has requested Kurenai's presence in his office. Before you ask, no, I'm not allowed to tell you why, but I can tell you that it isn't something to worry about. Kurenai just sighed and followed her friend, no matter how mad she was at the Hokage. She wasn't going to disobey his orders. Anko watched as Kurenai and Yugao left, before turning to her own student. I'm really interested in seeing what's going on. Want to stay and train or just hit up a rooftop opposite the Hokage's window and hopefully get some new teasing material? Haku had finally gotten used to having a choice in what to do. And there was someone she wanted to see back in town. Let's go, the faster we get there the lower the chance you miss anything good. Anko smiled at her student, who had taken to wearing almost as little as she did. It felt good to be creating a newer, one day just as sexy version of her. Haku had always had a predilection for clothing that was pretty sexy. Before she met Anko she had just kept it her choker and the clothes no one else saw. After realizing Kunoichi could wear almost anything without getting called out on it in Konoha, Haku had spent her first paycheck on a trench coat like her sensei's, just in black. And the rest of her current outfit. Gone was the full-length formal kimono, and in its place were black thigh-high ninja sandals, black booty shorts, and a pink halter top. She kept her choker though, never knew when it might be necessary. When Kurenai walked into the Sandame's office, she was met with the frown that she had gotten used to seeing when the kind old man looked at her. The fact that she was one of the very few people that he apparently didn't like made her feel self-conscious, and it kept her from trying to bargain to be able to see Naruto. Good job, Nico, return to your post. Yugao nodded and vanished back to her spot in the corner of the room. Jounin Yuhi, there is another person coming to this meeting that we are waiting on, please have a seat. That was another thing that made Kurenai nervous in this office. He always referred to her as her rank now, when he had called her by name since she was a little girl. He must really be disgusted with her for wanting a 12-year-old, unsurprising since she had the same thoughts every once in a while, despite Anko trying to help her through it. The standard leaf shunshin appeared, and inside were two figures. Kurenai's breath faltered for a moment as she instantly knew that the shorter of the two was Naruto, but the older of the two made her start worrying even after Yugao had told her she didn't need to. Naruto had spoken with her about his biological family, and had mentioned that apparently Sannin no Jiraiya was his godfather. Seeing the man reminded her of how Guy, Kakashi, and the Hokage had cornered her after Anko started teasing Naruto. Ah, Jiraiya, Naruto-kun, please seat yourselves accordingly. Jiraiya sat down in the middle chair, while Naruto was forced into the chair on the right, Kurenai still being kept separate from him. I'm sure that Jiraiya neglected to mention what this was about, and Yugao did not have permission to reveal the specifics, so I will bring you both up to speed. After speaking with Jiraiya, I have amended the terms of this period of separation. So long as Jiraiya is present, and I am notified so I can observe, you two will be allowed to meet each other. I know that the past few weeks have likely been difficult for you both, so today will be your first meeting. Dismissed. It took a moment for Naruto and Kurenai to realize that they were being allowed to spend time together once more, and they were immensely grateful. Naruto gave one of his largest smiles, though the fact that the Hokage was the one to separate them kept him from leaping up and giving the Hokage a hug of youth. Kurenai had a clear smile also, though she was trying to hide how happy she was so that the Hokage didn't change his mind. The two of them had a lot to catch up on, and there was no better time to start than the present. How has your training been going, Naruto-kun? Were you able to get someone to help? Lunch was at Itaraku's today, Naruto having decided that this was close enough to a special occasion that he could have ramen a second time this week. Kurenai had oddly become fond of the place, and had been forced to avoid it for the last 2 weeks on the off chance of seeing Naruto there and having him pulled even further from her. Actually, Jiraiya-sensei has been helping me out, and my ninjutsu has skyrocketed. My genjutsu has been falling behind without you though, sensei. Maybe you could help me train after lunch. Jiraiya-sensei kind of just lets me do my own thing when he isn't directly teaching me a new technique. The wide smile on his face as he took his time eating his noodles and spoke with her were making Kurenai a little warmer than she was comfortable with. She had missed him enough that she just wanted to hug him when he showed how happy he was to be around her again. Jiraiya was allowing them the illusion of privacy by sitting at the other end of the stand from them. Speaking with Tucci about the good old days when it was Minato and Kushina at the stand with Jiraiya chaperoning. I tell you, it's much better with these two. Kurenai doesn't get upset and destroy half the street when we run out of salt ramen. Naruto also doesn't have hordes of fangirls following him and keeping real customers from reaching the stand. They may not be dating, but it sure feels like it sometimes. Jiraiya just nodded and kept watching as the two spoke. Naruto-kun, it's not important. How about you tell me what kind of things Jiraiya-sama has been teaching you? Kurenai really wanted to talk about what Anko had said about his feelings, and her own. But knowing that someone was watching them made it harder than it should be. I can't wait for these damn tests to end, then we can spend time together every day like we used to, maybe even start back up our daily after training hangout time. Wow, I didn't get why people thought oddly of us, and we had special hangout time after training just to talk. Knowing how I feel makes that sound a lot more awkward. Naruto scrunched his face when Kurenai stuttered, but he answered her question just the same. He's been teaching me some super cool stuff like Toad Ninjutsu, and we've been working on meditation. The only other thing he'll let me talk about before the finals is how he wants to turn me into a super pervert like him. Naruto either didn't notice or care that Jiraiya had been waving him off about the pervert thing. But Kurenai went from smiling at Naruto when he was watching her to glaring at Jiraiya the rest of lunch. Hinata-sama, a woman is here to see you. Hinata looked confusedly at the branch member that had appeared during her post-training cool-down until he spoke up again. She is scandalously dressed and just a little older than you. Hinata went from confusion to excitement, a smile forming slowly. The Chunin exams and training had made it difficult to spend as much time as she wanted with Haku, but the time they spent together had just gotten better after Anko had began teaching Haku. The branch member walked away when he saw blood start dripping from Hinata's nose, not wanting to interrupt whatever thoughts were doing such to her. His reaction upon seeing the girl at the doorway had been almost the same, but he wasn't about to tell Hayashi-sama that his daughter was a fan of scantily clad possible dominatrixes. Then again, maybe Hayashi would die and Hinata could become the clan head if he gave the man a heart attack. Even with the confidence boost she had experienced, the older of the two heiresses was still an absolute sweetheart. Hinata looked up a minute or so later to realize she was alone in the room and had most likely been keeping Haku waiting. She jumped out of her stretch and ran for the front door, luckily no one else was in the hall. She opened the door to see that Haku had a bag in each of her hands. Both were plain, unmarked bags, and neither were the clear type that allowed one to see the contents. Hey Hina-chan. Now, before anything else I need you to pick one of these bags. It's a little game to decide what we're gonna do first today. The affectionate name still gave Hinata the chills. She wasn't sure if she wanted to get used to it or just continue with that incredible feeling every time Haku spoke to her. She managed to look back at the bags, but noticed something that had somehow escaped her before. The right bag smelled very faintly of cinnamon. Oh, you got me cinnamon rolls, Haku-chan. This is the best day ever. Haku laughed a little bit, as she knew that from Hinata, that was possibly the truth. Hinata was her best friend, and the only thing that the girl loved as much as cinnamon rolls was maybe herself, but she didn't want to sound conceited. Maybe, or maybe I just warmed a bunch of icing and put it in a bag. Now hurry up and choose so we can get out of your front door. Hinata blushed when she realized that they were just standing and blocking the doorway to her home. So she quickly picked the right bag and stepped out. Haku smirked at Hinata before she turned around and ran. Wait. Haku-chan. Hinata ran after Haku, following her to a clearing the woods that existed in much of Konoha. When they reached there, Haku suddenly stopped, and Hinata was barely able to keep herself from colliding with her. Why did you run like that, Haku-chan? Haku smiled widely and turned to face Hinata. She motioned to wait a second as she pulled a blanket out of the bag from her left hand. The bag in my right hand is stuffed full of food and drinks. Congratulations, Hina-chan. You picked a surprise picnic. Hinata watched with a blush as Haku set the blanket down and pulled the food, including a small box of homemade cinnamon rolls from the right bag. I thought, gee, we've been training so hard and haven't done anything in so long, why not take today and do something fun and relaxing? So I made us some yakisoba, miso soup, and grilled chicken breast, baked a few cinnamon rolls, grabbed a little bit of sake, and packed up. But then I thought, wait, picnics don't last all day, so what else should we do? I decided to grab a couple things I'd been saving for a relaxing day and put them in the bag I put the blanket in. I ran off as part of the game. Hinata sat down right next to Haku and ate, drinking only a touch of the sake. She was afraid that if she drank too much, she would reveal her feelings and lose Haku's friendship. Meanwhile, Haku hid a disappointed frown when she realized that Hinata wasn't going to be drinking much. She'd been hoping to get Hinata to drink enough that she could confess and not feel awkward as she stared right into Hinata's perfect lavender eyes. Of course, if they knew each other's thoughts already, the sake would have been pointless. Haku ended up drinking more of the sake than she wanted, depressed. Her big plan looked to be a failure. I don't think Haku-chan should be drinking that much, but she bought it, so I guess this is all right. As soon as that thought finished, another entered Hinata's mind. Haku-chan, what would we have done first if I picked the other bag? Haku looked over and took a few seconds to process what Hinata was asking, before leaning up against her and speaking huskily. My other bag has massage oils in it. I was planning on taking you to the hot springs and rubbing your whole body down. But there's no way you'll want me to do something like that as sober as you are. Of course, Haku realized that she had actually answered when she looked up from where she'd been leaning and saw Hinata blushing terribly and doing that adorable nervous thing where she presses her fingers together. She didn't care at the moment though, she was too busy looking at Hinata's pretty fingers as they kept pressing against each other. Without any forethought, she straightened out a little and kissed Hinata's fingertips. Oh my Kami. Oh please tell me this is real, I want this to be real so bad. Hinata was practically frozen as Haku looked her in the eyes again, leaning closer to her face. She felt the soft lips leave her fingers and land on her neck. That was all the excitement that Hinata could take, and moments later, she fainted for the first time in months right on top of Haku. Haku blinked a few times as she realized exactly what she had just done, before she passed out right where she was, not bothering to push Hinata off of her first. Enko was laughing hysterically from her vantage point. Her awesome mini-me had totally seduced the Hyuga heiress and made her faint with a kiss. The fact that Enko had brought a camera and immortalized the moment on film was a major plus as well. Ha 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 ha. Woo. Maybe I shouldn't tell them I did this. Or better yet, I'll send them both the picture, with a little caption of me smiling on the bottom. Needless to say, Enko's merriment wasn't ending anytime soon. Not until one of them starting to stir awake, at any rate. Meanwhile, Jiraiya had stopped watching as Kurenai tried to teach her signature genjutsu to Naruto, the force of the perv commanding him to begin his newest Ika novel. There was even a title flowing through his mind. It would be called Ika Paradise, Forbidden First Kisses. Of course his writing in his notebook made Kurenai suspect it was about her and Naruto, as they were the only ones in sight. Jiraiya would maintain for the rest of his life that this book would be worth being forced to see the genjutsu of ultimate hell. Naruto was barely able to hold still on the arena floor, knowing that while his first fight would be a joke thanks to all of Jiraiya and Kurenai's training, his second was going to be either Lee or Gaara. Lee could use the Hashimoto better than he could, and thanks to his longer reach, often beat Naruto in taijutsu-only spars. Gaara, on the other hand, had that sand, and seemed absolutely insane for blood. Naruto hoped that he fought Lee, only because that meant that Lee had won. Just as Naruto thought he wouldn't be able to stand still anymore, the final competitor made it to the arena floor. Sasuke took his place in the lineup of competitors, standing on the far left as Zaku stood on the far right. The Sharingan-enhanced glare that Sasuke was launching at Zaku proved that the first fight of the day would be anything but friendly competition. A shinobi wearing his Hatayate as a bandana walked out, a senbon between his teeth. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chunin exam finals. This exam, finalists include Konoha, Suna, and Oto. This will be a tournament format. The competition will be as follows: Match 1, Uchiha Sasuke vs Ibumi Zaku. Match 2, Narashikamaru vs Sabaku no Temari. Match 3, Hyuga Hinata vs Aburame Shino. Match 4, Mato Naruto vs Tsuchi Kin. Match 5, Lee Rock vs Sabaku no Gaara. Match 6 will be the winners of the first 2 matches, match 7 the last 3. The final will be the 8th match. He turned quickly back to the genin that awaited promotion, whispering with his voice strengthening jutsu disabled. Is that understood? The competitors all nodded, and the man turned back to the audience. Very well. I am Shiranui Genma, proctor of this test. The only rule is, no killing an opponent that has surrendered. Uchiha Sasuke, Abumi Zaku, remain on the field. Everyone else, to the competitor's box. I can't wait to see the Uchiha fight, it has been a long time since I saw a Sharingan. Hiruzen looked at the fake Kazekage, holding back his laughter at Orochimaru. It seems that Orochimaru had arrogantly assumed that everyone was too terrified of him to betray him. There were people far more intimidating than Orochimaru, including himself. Orochimaru was the boogeyman here in Konoha, but everywhere else he was one of the 3 Sannin. Threatening sure, but no match for the shinobi no kami. My dear Kazekage, I assure you this match will be less about the Sharingan than it will blasts of fire and lightning. Young Sasuke is talented, but this match is personal to him. I only hope that he realizes just how empty vengeance leaves the soul. Orochimaru didn't bother to continue the conversation, he was much too involved in watching the 2 opponents square off. Fighters, the rules are clear. Do not kill opponents that have surrendered. No other rules exist. Hajime. The moment that Genma finished his proclamation, the combatants exploded into motion. Sasuke launched himself at his opponent, while Zaku fired a blast of sound straight into the dusty arena grounds. Sasuke stopped, and peered through the dust in an attempt to find Zaku's location, and smirked as formed 6 hand seals and let out the signature Uchiha technique. Katan, Gukaki no Jutsu. Just as the final seal was formed, Zaku had launched what he thought was a surprise attack. Zankaha. The wave of wind and sound struck Sasuke's fireball, before being overwhelmed. The speeding blast of fire raced toward the surprised Otonin, but he dove out of the way shortly before he would have been roasted. The dust that had previously been picked up settled as the audience watched, most of them cheering the Uchiha on. How did you see me in that dust? I was sure that I had taken out your Sharingan? Zaku really wished that he had a mission to kill Sasuke instead of test his Sharingan. But he would prove himself superior and win even if he couldn't kill the arrogant punk. You know nothing, fool, and I'll make sure that you die that way. Sasuke's eyes morphed slightly, becoming 3 intersecting ellipses as he stared at Zaku, suppressed rage clear in his stance. The odd effect ended immediately, Sasuke moving one of his hands to his face on impulse as he felt his vision temporarily shift. Sasuke's hands came together to form a string of seals once more, mumbling slowly under his breath as he did so. Tori Tatsu, Saru Inu Inoshishi Tori Raiten, no Shinto Nami no Jutsu. Sasuke pulled his hands apart and clapped them together quickly, Zaku being knocked off his feet seemingly by nothing. Sasuke threw a brace of kunai, but Zaku recovered enough to deflect them with his trademark technique. Do you like it? I decided to channel the high-speed vibrations of Raiten into an invisible attack by slowing them to the speed of a sound wave. I'm going to use your own weapon to destroy your body, like you did my teammate. Sasuke dashed in close, deflecting Zaku's pitiful taijutsu like it was nothing. He had been sparring with Kiba and Kakashi for a long time, and both of them were Zaku's superior in close combat. That boy created his own technique at this age? Worse, he found an alternate way to utilize Raiten in such a way that Futon will have a lesser effect on it. I guess I should just be thankful that we are in an alliance, Hokage Dano. Orochimaru had never seen a sound-based jutsu that didn't use Futon. He had never considered slowing down the movement of lightning to change the wave construction. Sarutobi was laughing as Orochimaru waxed eloquent on the genin he planned on stealing. Sasuke really was much like Kakashi, making his own techniques from a young age, like this. Then again, he had inherited some of Kakashi's bad traits too, like not understanding a friend's worth until they are gone. Hopefully, this taste of vengeance would kill Sasuke's desire to eliminate his brother, but he doubted it. Sasuke was toying with Zaku at this rate, deflecting strikes with ease and dodging any attempt by his foe to cut him with a kunai. It was obvious that Zaku was mediocre at best in every way. Without his cannon arms, there was nothing that made Zaku a threat. Even that threat was minimized by the mixture of Katan techniques and his own unique move. Bored of humiliating the pathetic Otonin, Sasuke struck him with a mule kick straight from the Goken. Zaku flew against the far wall, before Sasuke looked him in the eye with his Sharingan to induce the same Genjutsu effects that Sakura had a month ago. He walked evenly to his opponent, forming the same hand seals he had earlier as he came close. Zaku is unable to battle, Shousa-right-ton, no Shinto Nami no Jutsu. Sasuke overrode Genma's call with his shout, and clapped his hands inches from Zaku's chest. The light returned to Zaku's eyes just long enough for them to literally explode, as well as for a fountain of blood to launch from his nose and mouth. The wall behind him was untouched, and even the clap itself had made no sound. Sasuke turned and walked away as he was declared the victor, having technically killed Zaku before the match was called. He didn't expect to feel like this though, not so wrung out. He felt empty, no matter how badly he had wanted to kill Zaku before. He felt himself petty, having killed a man that he had already beaten and humiliated. Some people deserved to die, and the thought of taking life wasn't what bothered him, it was why he had. Sakura had turned her back on an opponent to tell the proctor that he had been ensnared in her genjutsu, and had paid the price for it in a life-or-death battle. He had shouted just loud enough to ensure he wouldn't be disqualified for killing a helpless, beaten foe. Some people did deserve to die, but that didn't mean he had to draw it out. Your Uchiha is absolutely vicious, Hokage Dano. I'm amazed that he would go so far to avenge a teammate though. Most shinobi aren't known for having many friends. Hiruzen sighed lightly as he put up with more of his former students' attempts at banter. He really wished that the invasion signal would be sent so that he could just kill the man already. He should have done so years ago, curse his soft heart. He is vicious because he doesn't have many friends, Kazekage Dano. It was a fairly common problem among the Uchiha, before Itachi murdered them all, anyway. Hiruzen didn't like remembering that incident. But he did enjoy the twitch of anger that Orochimaru let show thinking about how Itachi had surprised him. We will now commence with the second battle, Nara Shikamaru and Sabaku no Temari, to the arena floor. Temari sailed down elegantly on her fan, while Shikamaru just sighed and walked down. No way he would avoid this fight with his mom in the audience. She was way too troublesome. Yoshino Nara glared at the competitor's box, certain that her son had just slighted her somehow. She hoped that the young lady in the arena would bash a little sense into him before her husband's clone won. Maybe ties between Suna and Konoha could be improved if this Temari bashed her way into her son's heart as she had his father's. Though she used a frying pan instead of a fan. Shikaku Nara looked at his wife nervously as her face switched from absolutely livid while staring at what must have been their son, to a creepy smile that reminded him of when she had won his virginity. He really hoped that she wouldn't ask for a replay of that night again, it always got people asking questions about the frying pan imprint on his face. He almost felt lucky that he would be fighting off an invasion today, she never made him fight and have sex in the same day, after all. Sigh. Can you do me a favor and surrender? I really don't want to have to actually fight in this exam. I don't like fighting girls, and I hate putting effort into things even more. Temari wasn't sure if this guy was being serious or not, but she was going to squish him anyway. It was her default response to anything that irritated her. Proctor, get this match started so that I can stick my fan where the sun don't shine. Genma cringed and looked at Shikamaru piteously, hoping that the poor boy could escape the cruel fate that this woman planned for him. Meanwhile, Yoshino could be heard laughing in delight from her spot in the audience, as Shikaku left and went into his battle position. Combatants ready, Hajime. Temari immediately opened her fan and swung, sending a cloud of dust at the genius shinobi. She noticed a shadow coming across the ground at her, and backflipped away from it. The dust cleared to reveal Temari standing just outside the reach of Shikamaru's shadow, his body hidden somewhere in the trees. Using the tree's shadows to bolster your own? It's not gonna work on a kunoichi like me, get out here and take your punishment, like a man. Shikamaru put his hands into an odd shape and sat obscured by the trees. A few minutes later, a brace of kunai was thrown and an odd shadow covered part of the battlefield. Temari used her fan to blow the kunai away, rather than dodge back and limit her movement. She missed the most important piece, however, as the flash tag on the parachuting kunai went off a moment before she was frozen. When her eye adjusted, she witnessed Shikamaru a mere 30 feet in front of her, his shadow connecting with hers. How? You're a mid-long range fighter whose primary technique is a disabler, you shouldn't have been able to get in range of me so fast. Temari was embarrassed that she had been defeated, and refused to simply let it go without an explanation. Troublesome. A friend of mine helped my taijutsu and speed out back in the academy. I've been keeping my speed drills up, as they were the most useful training for my techniques. It helps that I can use the Doton, Morigekure no Jutsu, to go underground and avoid backlash from flash tags. Anyway, now that I've got you still, I quit. The audience died down completely, no discussion heard at all. The Kage box was completely silent as well, Hiruzen and Orochimaru stunned that anyone would give up after winning like that. Yeah, you cut me with the wind blades from your first technique, and I had to bandage it and take a blood pill already. Even if I keep going, I'm not gonna win against someone like Sasuke. Congratulations. All at once, twin screams of rage came from both Temari and Yoshino, making every male in their vicinity cringe in fright. No matter how strong they were, most men would forget that there was nothing these women could do to hurt them when so much rage reared its ugly head. Denma declared Temari the winner just in time to avoid having her smash Shikamaru's head in with her fan, before both men fled up the arena walls into the audience. Shikamaru was glad that his mom was going to leave the arena, no way he could take a chewing out right now. Little did the poor boy know, Ino was going to give him an earful of nag incredible enough to last him 3 weeks. Which would be a lifetime in anyone else's terms, but Shikamaru got nagged a lot. Right, well. Match 3 competitors, Aburame Shino and Hyuga Hinata. Report to the arena floor. Denma was rubbing his cheek where his Senbon had scratched him when he cowered away from the force of evil that the twin screech had been. He was glad that he didn't poison them, otherwise a new proctor would be necessary. Shino and Hinata stood across from one another, Hinata giving a happy smile as Shino gave what would equate as the same coming from him. Both bowed and made the sign of respectful combat before settling into their battle stances. Hajime. Both stood still for a while as Genma began the match, searching for any tells about the next move. I adore fights between teammates, they are always so interesting. Rare for the first round of the tournament though. Didn't Orochimaru defeat Jiraiya in their Chunin exam? Hiruzen wasn't sure if Orochimaru was trying to gloat from the win or give a hint that this Kazekage wasn't the real deal, but he did recall the match in particular. He laughed thinking about how Tsunade had jokingly offered to go out with him if he proved superior to their pale friend. Needless to say, that was the true birth of the two's rivalry. Jiraiya probably thought that Tsunade really would date him if he beat the snake, poor perverted fool he was. That is true, though that Orochimaru was a far better one than the one that exists now. I hope that there are no repeats of his mistakes among any of the current crop, they have such amazing potential. Once more a slight twinge came from the orchikage. But Hiruzen was no longer in the mood to enjoy it. Remembering how Orochimaru was as a child always made him pensive. Shino made the first move in the arena, leaping backwards and sending an orb of insects to attack Hinata. The Aburame clan were fairly known for not shouting the name of their techniques like many ninja did. Whether from their tendency to be quiet or their logical nature was unknown, but the fact that they almost exclusively used insect techniques nullified most of that advantage. Hinata activated her Byakugan and did something that surprised all but a select few in the arena. Raitun, Saitokina Nagar no Jutsu. A short length of ninja wire fell from her fingertips, covered in sparking electricity. The Kakachu that were flying towards her were all shocked into submission as she danced around the attack, combining the smooth dancing movements with her electrified wire. She swung around quickly as the wire crumpled into static balls that detached from her fingers and flew at Shino, who burst apart into a mushy bunshin. A small group of fireballs launched at Hinata from the trees, which she easily dodged. A larger, faster blast of fire came from the same direction, once more dodged by the graceful Hyuga heiress. The shuriken that came from the other angle, however, struck her in the back of her right shoulder. She looked back in confusion, not having seen the attack coming. Logic states that the Byakugan must have some forms of weakness. Why? Otherwise, the Hyuga would have dominated the village with a perfect Kekkei Genkai. Thus, weaknesses were studied from village battle records, indicating 2 possible. First, blasts of intense chakra from a being such as a Jinchuriki that have so much it is blinding to a Byakugan. This method was unusable due to my low reserves, and inefficient no matter who uses it. The other weakness came from hospital reports on Hyuga who died in the war against the Suna puppeteers from poison Senbon in their upper back. Final conclusion, the Byakugan has an area that one must reach a minimum of experience with before one can see with it. All present were stunned that a genin had discovered a weakness in the vaunted Byakugan, though few were happy that he explained how he hit his teammate to her after doing so. Orochimaru was glad that he wanted a Sharingan instead, though having a single Byakugan implanted in the center of his forehead later might be a good idea. He'd give it some thought. Also, I should inform you that I covered all my shuriken with tranquilizers for this battle. I doubted that I would be able to do enough damage to defeat you legitimately before you caught on to the blind spot on your own. Hinata smiled at him once more. Before her body crackled with electricity all over, every tenketsu in use at once. She practically disappeared as she dashed at Shino, connecting a chakra-laden palm to his diaphragm, knocking the wind out of him. The next strike was a chop to his neck, sending him into unconsciousness. Hinata as well tumbled to the ground, the toxin taking effect. Genma checked both genin before he looked back to the audience and gave his announcement. Both genin are unconscious, as such, neither moves on to the finals. No one in the audience was able to speak in a positive or negative to the announcement. Having seen something similar to the Reikage Shiraiten no Yoroi. Anko, Haku, Kiba, Ino, Shikamaru, Kurenai, Asuma, Gai, Kakashi, Tenten, and Niji were all gazing down at the arena, all of them save Haku shocked. I can't believe she finished it. I mean, I was helping her with her manipulation, but I didn't expect her to figure it out so soon, Kurenai exclaimed. Everyone nodded in agreement save Haku, who was enjoying the look on everyone else's face. She hasn't mastered it. Right now she can only keep it going for about 10 seconds, before her reserves are tapped and she starts getting electrical burns. I used my mirrors to observe her from multiple angles as she tried to figure it out, and to give her a target to practice the speed increase on. Based off the stories we heard, she's only about a fifth as fast as him when she uses that anyway. Anko turned her "why didn't you tell me" face on Haku as the girl turned back to admire her friend. The Reikage is gonna be steamed when he finds out a Hyuga has managed to bastardize his technique. I hope I get sent in for diplomacy, it should be really entertaining. Everyone sweat dropped at what passed for humor from Kakashi, who to be fair was irritated that Sasuke had managed to talk him into arriving on time. Watching the Reikage chop his desk in two with his bare hands would be hilarious. Fourth match, Mato Naruto and Tsuchi Kin, Hajime. Naruto and Kin had come to the arena while everyone was talking about how amazing the matches had been this time. It was one of the most exciting Chunin exams to date. There were numerous standout fighters from Konoha so far, and there were high hopes for the match between the Kazekage's son and the Uchiha as the final match. Kin opened the fight just as she had before, throwing Senbon with and without bells at and around Naruto, who simply defected them away. Have you forgotten what happened last time, moron? These bells aren't just a distraction. Naruto's face glazed over as Kin pulled her strings, a smirk coming on her face as he slipped under her genjutsu. Sorry boy, guess you just can't cut it. The smirk on her face died as Naruto's hair grew out and formed a kind of armor that stopped the brace of Senbon she had thrown at what she believed to be an incapacitated target. Please, my sensei is the greatest genjutsu mistress alive, what makes you think you could trap me? Naruto reformed his hand seal and called out his jutsu this time, smiling as his opponent took up a guarding stance. Hari Senbon. Needles flew from Naruto's golden shell in all directions, a number of them piercing non-vital spots on Kin's body. When the attack ended, she opened her stance back up, more Senbon in her grip. Naruto allowed his hair to return to normal, before putting his right hand forward, palm up. A poof of smoke and a Fuma shuriken appeared in his hand. He threw it straight at Kin, batting away her Senbon with his wrapped hands. Kin ducked the massive projectile, only to pass out as it flew over her head. Naruto sighed as he laid her on the ground, having run to her faster than the shuriken even with his seals on. He really hoped that either Lee or Gaara gave him a good fight, hopefully Lee so that they could have a youthful Goken match. Either way, he'd have to wait for their match to finish first, and he was certain that it would be just as impressive as Sasuke's or his teammates, maybe even more so. Orochimaru adjusted his hat while facing where he knew Kabuto would be stationed to launch the invasion. This was a signal to wait until the second round, rather than launch during Gaara's fight as planned. It wouldn't be much of a delay, but he was actually enjoying himself, something he hadn't done in a long time. This was all for now. Thank you for watching, I hope you liked it and that you will be back for more. Please like, share and subscribe. See ya.